Alright everybody, we're going to do another before and after water change on the Gourami tank here. Nothing really special going on, just as you can probably tell, it's getting a little thick over there on the left hand side. Vegetation on the top is getting a little dense. You can barely even see what's going on in the bottom of the fish. I can see a little better than it's coming out on camera, but it's still pretty dark in there. The water's getting a little tannin stained, and I really do need to get back into this corner back here where my filter intake is. My spray bar is spraying down across the back. For the most part, I do have a little bit of it facing up in the forward edge there, but the trailing edge of the spray bar sprays down. So I do need to get back there and remove a little bit of that vegetation so that the filter pickup is able to pull some of the detritus out of the tank a little more easily. One of the other things I do is I always put a power head on the opposite side. I know you can't see it back there, but there is a power head. You can see that little bit of red, that's part of it. That is blowing down and across the back, so it's keeping all of the water moving across the back along the bottom, and that keeps it feeding towards the filter intake, and that helps reduce the amount of detritus that accumulates on the bottom of the tank for me. So all we're really going to do is maybe about a 25% water change tonight. I don't think I'm going to mess with the filter or anything. I am going to pull a lot of those plants out of here, and we're going to have a much more brightly lit tank when this is all done. I do have a couple of African dwarf frogs up in that mess somewhere, so I'm going to have to be really careful as I pick through it to make sure I don't accidentally pull one out and throw it in a bucket in the other room. I've done stuff like that before in the past. I've actually found otocinclus in the sink that came from floating plants that I had removed and did not realize that the otocinclus were on it. So I will be careful about that. I am aware that I've got the frogs in here, so I will be looking for them when I pull the plants out. So let me go ahead and get started. And the next place that you and I will meet will be over at the washing machine, where we're going to go ahead and look at some water testing and check some basic parameters just to find out what's going on at the tank, make sure everything's where I expect it to be and I'm not facing any surprises. Then we can go ahead and get on with the water change. Alright everybody, nitrates are nothing to worry about. I know that looks a little redder than it should, but that is not actually red at all. That's very brown, and it has been sitting there for about 15 minutes now. I've been actually overworking on the tank. We have had a time to get the pH tested though. My tank water is on the right and my tap water is on the left. The tap water is a little bit higher in pH than my tank water, and more importantly, the tap water is slightly alkaline or basic, and the tank water is slightly acidic. So shifting across that line is not something I want to do. So we're only going to do about a 20 to 25% water change, and we're going to go over and look at right now when I'm about to switch over, and we will see how much I've actually drained from the tank. We will take a look at some of the plants I'm throwing away. These are actually some of the plants I'm salvaging. And then in the end we will actually come over and look and see what the final pH looks like after we've mixed the tap and the tank water back together, and then we'll get the before and after look at the final product. Alright everybody, believe it or not, a couple of things came up between there and here, and this is not actually where I drained the tank to. This is about 3 inches filled already. So we did go down a little bit lower than what we're seeing here, but not too much, and it certainly was not my normal massive water change that I usually do. But I did want to give you at least an idea of how much water we're draining out of the tank today, and again, we can assume we're talking about maybe somewhere down to about here is where the water came down to. So not a huge water change, but it probably was at least a 25%, maybe even a little more than that when you consider how much displacement is taking place at the bottom of the tank. That's a lot of rock and woodwork down there. So the bulk of the volume of the water in this tank is in the upper portions of it. So while it may appear to be a 25% water change, I've actually removed more than 25% of the actual water. So here's a little bit of a look, for best we can see, of the stuff that's getting tossed. Underneath of all of that is the pothos plant. If you'll remember, if you watch my videos, you'll know that in my gudgeon tank I've had some pothos plant floating in there. It was all covered with the brown diatom algae, and I kept saying one of these days that's going to get pulled out and thrown away. Well, it did, and it has been. So let's me get going with this. I'll get finished up filling it up, and then we will take one last look at the pH, and then we'll do our before and after and any final thoughts at the end. Alright everybody, there you go. We've got my tank water in the center. That's my original tank water that we started with, and then we've got my tap water on the left, and then the final end result is there on the right. Now you can kind of tell there's a slight difference between the before tank water and the after tank water, but it's not very much. If we put the vial between the two, we can actually tell that it is actually slightly between the two colors. However, it is far, far closer to the color of what we started with in the tank, and that's exactly what I was going for. I didn't want to do a big enough water change that I really shifted that pH very far. So we are still under the neutral line, and we are still in the slightly acidic range, and therefore I don't think the fish are even going to notice that anything happened other than the slightly cleaner water. So I didn't bother to do an after test since our on the nitrates, that is, since the starting test on the nitrates was only at about 25 parts per million anyway. I wasn't really worried about testing the after. It's, you know, considerably lower than that now. So let's have one final look at what we started with, and then we'll go ahead and do the after look and any final thoughts. Alright everybody, there you go, there's your after. Now all I really did was pull some plants out from the top, and then I trimmed a bunch of plants on the right, and that was it. I just put some fresh water back in, and I didn't even wipe the glass down. I didn't do a gravel vac, and again I've said I can't really vac the gravel per se, but I do try to vac up anything I see on the bottom. In this case I didn't even bother to do that. I just pulled a little bit of water out, and then we just topped it back off. I was very careful when I took the plants out, and I did not see any frogs, but you never know. There's one right there, so I know I've got at least one left in the tank. And I suppose we could have a look over here and see if we can find the other. All the gouramis are still sort of hiding up there in the corner. Don't really know what to make of their new environment. But I don't see the other frog off the top of my head here. So as a precaution, I have actually kept the plants that I took out of here in a bucket of water in the other room. So if the frog is in there, I will go through that with a fine-tooth comb before I actually get rid of any of it. So that's it really. No other final thoughts. Nothing really going on in this tank other than a basic water change. I just wanted to show you what impact a small water change and a large plant removal can do as far as just visually changing how a tank looks. And there you go. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe if you're not already. If you are, thank you. And I also thank you for watching this video. And I'll see you real soon on the next one.